as far as the farming and legislation and nutrition goes in Zimbabwe? Or do you find more similarities or more differences, I guess is the best way to put it?
I'd say it's different. Firstly, with the climate and the government is different. So we do have challenges, but the government tries to support agriculture by promoting. We have a program that is running, that is rolling, that is called Command Agriculture, where the government provides seed for farmers. But they first have to review your farm and how you go about agriculture to support you with systems like that. But we do have also challenges with small-scale farmers. They do encounter challenges on that level. But it's not the same because the people in power are different.
Can you tell me what commodity groups?
I'm sorry.
Can you tell me what commodity groups?
Oh, you're going to get me in
Name
trouble
some.
right off the bat
No,
now.
name some. I don't.
Uh,
So I'm gonna go talk to
First of all, the
commodity
Illinois Soybean Association. Soybeans are just taking this on the chin and are going to take this on the chin for 10 years. It not only affected the crop we were growing, it affected what was in storage from last year and the marketing of next year and the year after that. There's one. Pork producers. I'm not faulting any of these. I'm encouraging. Pork producers. A lot of pork was going to China. It's not going there anymore. The good side of all that is the bad side of African swine flu, that the hog population in China is so decimated right now. They're talking they've lost 16%. I'll bet it's twice that. Maybe 3 times that before it's all done. And so one man's loss is the only thing that's saving the pork industry right now. Corn growers, only corn growers to a lesser extent. These are state organizations. There is also national affiliation. Cattlemen's Association. I think there's just a host of them that I know you've got to be careful when you sit down in front of our leaders so you don't alienate, but it's time the facts came out, and they need to be out there in black and white.
I do know because of family farms in Iowa that the big compensation from the government for the tariffs is a penny a bushel for the world. Wow.
Yeah. Did you all hear that? A cent a bushel. And then it's only on half of what they produced. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Same way on soybeans. Half of what you produce.
No,
And there will be no program next year, we are told.
Really?
we got it on the whole thing on the soybeans.
Yeah. I'm
They
sorry?
came out with the second half on the soybeans.
Excellent, excellent.
Hmm.
But I think every one of those people that are receiving that, thank you again. Every one of those people are receiving that would just soon trade as have aid.
Extra penny?
I really believe that.
Yeah.
I think that's the case. The lady in green had a question.
You know, in the legislative part, you said, well, we have to look at what's being proposed and who's proposing it. So where are we with that in Congress? And also, I just wonder, I know you don't represent a farm organization at the moment, but what's the Illinois Farm Bureau's position about legislation to update NAFTA?
Well, the this is a little like the initial question, where is agriculture, where's it going? I don't know where to start and where to stop.
Well, who's the
If
Carol
you're- if-
Mosley
if-
Crown now?
If you're talking specifically about NAFTA, or are you talking bigger picture? Or another subject altogether?
I'm talking about one of your things, your points was about tariffs
Oh,
and
okay.
about,
Okay.
specifically, and then how you worked with, the senator at the time and all specifically about that.
The present president of Illinois Farm Bureau has had a repeated seat at the table with the Secretary of Agriculture and the President. I'm a little disappointed in our Secretary of Agriculture. He's eloquent, he's knowledgeable, but I'm not sure he's the advocate we had in Jack Block, for anybody that knew John Block, under the Reagan administration. That was a farmer, an Illinoisan, a leader, and he wasn't afraid to speak up. The other side of that is somebody has to be listening. Now, I've just about stepped on everybody's toes by now, I think, but I'm not sure that they're listening. And again, soybeans took it on the chin. I knew this was going to happen a year before the actual act was taken. It was China. They take 1 out of 3 bushels we produce. It was bound to go there first, and it did. So I think there are people that are trying, are advocating, are doing their job, but I'm going to put some of this on the Secretary of Agriculture. You wanted to respond?
Do you actually think that we will get the soybean trade with China back? I think China's done with us.
Oh, I don't think they're done because they can't source enough from the rest of the world. But we're never going to get back, I had poor choice of words. It's going to take a long, long time to get back to where we were.
They're in the saving phase.
And I'm talking
Put in
perhaps decades. I'm not talking months.
Right.
And in the meantime, I look at many of farm incomes in 5-year periods. I don't know that I have any special knowledge, but I think I've seen it repeated a couple times, where we came from that sweet spot in 13 and 14 and 15, and we slide for about 5 years to where we are now, and then we're going to tread water for about 5 years, I'm afraid. And then maybe we can start that 5-year ascension out the other direction. I'm not a gloom and doomer, and if there's a reporter in the room, I would sure be disappointed if somebody put a headline in the next paper that Dale is down on agriculture, because I am not. I have had that done to me before, so I know what it feels like. So, but I would be deeply disappointed if that happened here. I have not given Nomakhosi a chance to talk, and I apologize.
Is China in Zimbabwe? Is China, has China moved into Zimbabwe? To trade, to set up textile mills, to do all the things that China does. I know they've moved into parts of Africa.
We do have projects that we see Chinese people moving into, like mining, like architecture and building. But I'm not very sure on the depth of of their involvement. But we have a couple of projects where we see them working with our government here and there.
Perhaps another way to look at this trade situation is I remember reading articles with NAFTA, especially when we still had it going on and Mexico was getting a lot of our corn dumped over in that country due to our prices were lowering their prices and affecting their farm economy. And the thing is with American agriculture, and I've seen this ever since I was young, is that once we get good at growing crops or raising livestock, if you look at how the livestock sector has changed to more vertical integration for dairy, hogs, chicken, eggs, bigger farms, bigger corporations, sometimes not even owned by a farmer anymore, most of it's on contract. And farmers have gotten bigger because most farmers have to rent in order to survive. And if you're trying to support the family off the farm, you really can't do it that well anymore. You have to have a wife working off the farm, the farmer's got to work off the farm. I guess the idea is, it's good that we grow corn and beans a lot here, but we need to try to get back to where we used to be, like grow hay, oats, wheat. You need to have a four-crop rotation, not only for the soil, but help with the economic side of things. But the thing is, if we try to go back and have NAFTA, or the North American Free Trade Agreement, some of those countries that are getting hurt by the free trade agreement that we used to have, like in some of the African countries, in Central and South American countries, they actually have fair trade for the cocoa and different fruits to help provide more of a better wage for their family, for their economy, because free trade will not help lift those countries from poverty. And we're more of a developed country. So the idea is that maybe we need to look at other avenues, other than just free trade. We need to look at fair trade, like have a fair price, because your grain prices and your livestock prices are also set by traders. They're also affected by disasters and things. But I remember my uncle's a dairy farmer, and even when there was surplus cows being sold in Wisconsin, that price of milk was not going up with what he was getting paid. And I think there needs to be a more of a fair way to set milk prices for farmers than just going by the hundredweight. Because every month your check can go up $2 or $3 a hundredweight. And it makes it really hard to budget because your profit margins get thinner as your input costs go higher for feeding the cows, taking care of the crops, putting the crops in the ground. It's not a cheap endeavor, and I've heard people say to me, oh, farmers are rich, they have all this equipment. No, they're not, they're in debt. That's quite the opposite. There's still that idea that people don't understand that it's not that in reality. But I think we need to look at more of better ways of setting trade agreements, and I really think this current administration isn't listening to our legislators. No one wants to work together, and I've seen that with Congress, that both parties don't want to work together, and we had a president that's not normal. And so I just think that, I'm not saying I'm against free trade, but if we're going to do free trade, we can't be hurting other countries' economies, but maybe look at fair trade ideas as well to try to provide a fair price to our farmers. Because sometimes you have worldwide disasters here in the U.S., it doesn't mean the price that you're getting paid for that grain or that milk is going to be higher. Sometimes it seems like it doesn't happen. And we can't just keep on trying to overproduce. We have to try to be more responsible with our resources and not try to just continue to put more cows on the milk line or raise more hogs, because hogs take more grain versus dairy cows, but a lot of farmers around here don't necessarily want to do livestock because it takes more work. But if you grew up with it and you're into that type of lifestyle, then sometimes you stay with it. But there's more and more farmers that are either growing crops, and if it's the third, fourth generation, they're working more than one job. It's a lot harder. So.
Do you wish to comment?
Pretty.
I can see the wheels turning.
He basically covered my thoughts, so I'll leave it at that.
No disrespect intended. I heard 10 subjects in there.
Oh, no.
I am not going to apologize for using have for a comparative advantage anywhere. I think it is phenomenal that we can take a bushel of corn down to Hennepin, put it on a boat, a barge, excuse me, take it to the Gulf, put it on an ocean-going vessel, go halfway around the world to a port in China, take it inland, and do that more efficiently than they can raise corn in one part of the country to move it to the other. I think that's something to be proud of. So I'm not going to apologize for that. We have an infrastructure here. If we're not careful and let it go too far, that is second to none in the world. And I alluded to a couple of those points in my comments. And so again, I will not apologize for that. When you look at a map of the continental United States, where is it green? You're sitting in the middle of it. Dairy. I've never been a dairyman, nor did I wish to be one. I watched an uncle that complained that he missed his kids growing up. So I know that side of it. And when we had Christmas and Thanksgiving, he always had to come late and leave early. And so it's not a pretty picture right now. But I can tell you that there is a cooperative where the farmers that are part of that cooperative are not just surviving, but making some money and getting a 13th check. And part of that is due to the management of that cooperative. So there's a little bit of a twist there. And I can go down the line of it. And I'm not picking on you.
Oh, I know you're not.
Not at all.
Oh, I get you.
But many of the things you say are true. But I don't know how to define fair trade. And I think it's probably evident by the things I said. I don't know what that is.
Sure.
But I'm all for trying to be as free as we can be and use a comparative advantage. Larry.
The metaphor of our table is a marvelous and complicated metaphor because sometimes the table is used for negotiation. Sometimes the table is used to be inclusive. We bring in the family and we sit around it and we break bread together and we talk and we do things. There's a lot of different tables that we've got to deal with, and I'd like to get an idea of what you guys think about how do we get more people at the table. Sometimes that table talks about water rights and the quality of water. Quick example running in my head is Des Moines can't purify their water because the nitrogen that's in it that comes down from up the Raccoon River, up around Boone, Iowa. So there's this squabble here. And those people have got to talk. We also have the table that's bigger yet, that is between the United States and China, the United States and Africa, the United States and the rest of the world. There are tables between Illinois and Iowa. There are tables between all the different commodities. And I want to, is there a better way that we can get more people to sit down at the table and talk and share that apple that's sitting next to you?
I think that's part of your mission, what you're doing right now, isn't it?
It is. It is. So me being an international volunteer, that is part of the process of sitting at the table, building bridges between countries. and between individuals and listening to the other person. You said earlier, being at the table is not only about speaking, but there has to be a person on the other end who's also listening to what you're saying. So sometimes taking that stand to listen and not have to say the commands all the time is inviting. Is one way of inviting people to the table, to our table. So, I've had the opportunity of people who listen to me, like, with this program that I'm doing, which is great for me at the table. Yeah.
A tough question, Larry, and I know you realize that. There are a number of fellowships around the country that are established just to try to do those things that you're talking about, but they are dwarfed by the larger issue. I was fortunate in 1981, a thing called the McCloy Foundation, which was formed by a General McCloy and a German equivalent after the Second World War, in an effort to try to build bridges back between the two countries themselves. And it started out with exchanges in theater and performing arts, and then it grew to business and something else. And after about 6 or 8 years, they said, why not agriculture? And so it's those kind of things, I think, that help and maybe are a start. I hosted a couple of Germans, one from their Bonverband and one actual farmer, and it worked well, and so they decided in this country to send a couple people back, and I was fortunate to be the first one chosen in that program. With that comes quite a little responsibility that I didn't fully recognize at the time. And the short story I will tell you that I learned my lesson from was we had a Secretary of Defense by the name of Haig at that time. And if you recall, when President Reagan was shot, they sequestered the vice president, and Mr. Haig stepped to the podium and said, "Country, relax, I'm in charge." So I'm getting there. So I'm in Germany, running from one Schleswig-Holstein to another, and meeting, and we come to one where effectively the regional president was speaking and espousing how he was a close friend of Secretary of State Alexander Haig. And I made the offhand comment, I said, it's too bad he doesn't understand agriculture. And a lot of people in the room snickered. And I literally stepped into it right there because I hadn't thought about what I said and who was listening. So I only share that from the respect that that was a learning experience, and I think that's part of what we have to do to make sure when we're at the table, we're thinking.
Any other questions or comments? I do have one last one that I would ask. Where we are, the things we've talked about, can you tell us something positive that you are looking at that is happening, that is unexpected? Something so that we walk out with positive thoughts about what's possible. And then, Alan, do you want to go first? And then Nomakhosi can finish?
One of the positives I highlighted was we are seeing organic farms, the small size to mid-sized farms growing, and we're seeing good sales with organic produce. So it is positive. It is good. We're seeing people move towards holistic management of agriculture, which is a move in the right direction. For now, it's a few people, and it's a number that is not enough for the change we want to see. But it's a good step because it's going to propagate change from one individual to the next. So that's a positive, that's a plus.
I made the comment a little bit ago, I didn't want to be perceived as negative, only realistic. I get to work for a company now that has opened my eyes to the organic side of agriculture, and the positives I see now are that I think all sides are becoming a little more accepting of the other, and I believe there's room for everybody. There's a place that everybody can fit into a niche, whether it's organic or conventional or livestock or grain or dairy, or not even a part of actually being on the farm, but espousing, I think, what are the positive principles that we have. I'm not very technological. I don't have a blog, and I'm not very good at the computer. But I have a granddaughter sitting right here who's got a blog that's making an impact on agriculture. I know she didn't want me to embarrass her, but I believe that to be the case. And those are the positives that I see.
And I apologize, I said that would be the last one. I have one more question for you. What would be the one thing that you would like to see happen that you haven't touched on this evening? If there was something that you could say tomorrow, this would be the most helpful thing, what would it be? I know, let's take a second.
I'm going to shift this one to nutrition, as a nutritionist. For me, I'd like to see better eating habits. People making better lifestyle choices with what they eat. And taking that step to build a relationship with farmers, to know where their produce is coming from, to engage in being responsible for what they eat. That's what I hope I'll see more in the future.
I alluded to some of the things that I think we need to accept responsibility for, so I won't repeat those. And I'm not sure I'm coming up with any one thing because I'm clouded by 100. Because the topic is so wide and so broad and so diverse. But if I may, I'd like to finish with these apples.
Sure.
I didn't create this. This is from George Bernard Shaw. You have an apple and I have an apple. And if we exchange those, we still have an apple, right? But if I came and could give you one idea tonight, and your question gave me an idea, then we can leave with 2 ideas. And that's what I would like to see.
Thank you so very much for joining us this evening, Melissa Nomakhosi. We appreciate the audience coming. I'm sure if you have more questions or comments, they'd be more than happy to have you come up and say hello. But anyway, it's been a very interesting evening. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Good night.
Thank you for the invitation.